him. We could ask him. Just ask him to stop. Don't ask him to stop working. Just ask him to stop screaming. Yeah.
Drilling.
Well, drilling is working. Yeah.
No, they can cut the shoe off.
Huh?
They can cut the shoe off.
Yeah, just explain to him it's 40 minutes. Were you away or was I away?
Tuesday, I had my wife had to do an MRI on the knee in Shulman. They give appointments at the middle of the night.
That's right.
So they need to check it in MRI. So I would be there at like 8:30 in the morning.
Really?
Yeah, all the MRI appointments they do in the middle of the night.
Lama.
I think during the day they do like hospital people, and at night they do cookies. Yeah.
ממש. Am I bothering you physically?
Not at all.
What time did they have you going in?
I'll be there at 3:30.
In the morning.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work.
That's great. Sounds great.
I'm happy with it, but
The background.
can you hear back there? Everybody gather around the speaker. Okay, we're going to do Tzidkas Hatzadik Daled. Moving right along, 3 challenges here. One is that I'm not feeling very well, so my voice is not working. The other thing is, even if it was, can't hear me. But I really, the construction's a simcha. I can't stop the construction, and it's also a little bit hard to concentrate. But Hashem Yazar, let me just. Hey, the Shiur today is generously sponsored. L'ilui nishmas Rabbi Yaacov Haber Rav Sholom Zal Bar Zisel Bas Rav Meir Zev HaKohen Zal Rav Sholom ben Rav Avraham Chaim Zal Rav Yitzchak Meir Zev ben Rav Avraham Chaim Zal Bar Sarah Biylא Bas Rav Leyb Zal. Okay, now what we're talking about, if you recall, refresh your memory for a moment, is Avodas Hashem Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim specifically, which is the cornerstone of Avodas Hashem, Balayla, Bachoshech. And this is, I believe, a theme that goes throughout everything that Rav Tzadok writes about and speaks about, is Avodas Hashem Balayla. Laila, as I said last week, means Laila, after Shkia. Laila means Galus in the writings of Rav Tzadok and Al Pi Svara. And Laila also means going through personal Laila, even if it's by day. Personal challenges, personal Yisurim. To put it in a different way, for our purposes, there's Hester Panim and there's Gilui Panim. So Hester Panim, Gilui Panim is hopefully when Mashiach comes, we'll have a complete Gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything will be Masudar, everything will seem right. Nowadays, things don't always seem so right. Doesn't whether it's internationally or whether it's in our own little life world over here, not everything seems right. The Galus, the Gemara touches up. There's not even a day that the call of the day seems to get worse and worse. That's a personal Laila. So let's call it Laila equals Hester Panim. Hester Panim means that Hashem is there. This is what's the key importance. Hashem is there the same way He's there by Yod. No question. But for whatever reason, Hashem has his own reasons of Hester Panim. The easiest way to explain it is that when there's a Hester, when there's a game of hide and seek going on, then we're working to reach Hashem. I was reading yesterday, I wasn't feeling well, and I was reading an article about happiness, a secular article about happiness. And this is a psychiatrist who's an expert in the brain doing brain scans and that type of stuff to see which part of the brain creates happiness, etc. It's a whole science of exactly where happiness is created and how. One of the things that he was saying, which sort of struck me, is that one of the mistakes people is they overdo the happiness part of the brain, thereby making it insensitive to happiness. So, for instance, let's say a person says, this food is going to make me happy. As an example, you use your imagination. So you eat that food day and night and every single day because it's supposed to make me happy, but the irony of it is it stops to make you happy. Because once your brain gets used to that level of stimulation, so that it stops being happy, again, now you need which is, I guess, the essence of addiction. But you need more. But in other words, you can't overuse your happiness gene, if you will. But I'm just saying a mashal that if everything would be begilui panim, then there would be no seeking of Hashem. And the seeking of Hashem is such an extremely important part. I would say it even more radical. If there wouldn't be Hester Panim, what would be the significance of us being Mekabel Malchus Shemayim? Well, what would it mean to be Mekabel Malchus Shemayim if everything is Begilui? What are we Mekabel? So, Pashup Shad, are we Mekabel on ourselves to breathe every day? We breathe. We probably ourselves to see, we see. Mekabel means that even though it's not Pashup, we're still Mekabel. So that's what we were talking about, Lila. And the Gimel ends with the Lakach Nosnoi Bracha Hayisera La'arvis, that there's an extra bracha that Chazal put in of Kriya Shvashal Arvis Shu Hashkivenu L'Sholom. Now let's do Dolev. Mitzvah Rishayna Shidischayev Ha'adam Kishanasa Adam Ben Shalosh Esrei Shana. So everybody likes to ask the bar mitzvah kid, what's the first mitzvah that you're going to do? Hu Kriya Shvashal Arvis. Here in Eretz Yisrael, so the kids are smarter and a little bit more sassy. And if you ask a kid here, what's the first mitzvah you're doing when you're bar mitzvah, he'll tell you Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. I ask every kid, and that's what I hear. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, I'm here. But it's not, what? Emunah. Like to say it's Kriya Shvashal Arvis is, that's already in 20 minutes. What do you mean? But certainly what Reb Tzadok means here is what's the first mitzvah b'chiyuv that you're doing? What's the first active mitzvah that you're doing? Emunah is something that you have, something that you are. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, those are passive mitzvahs that we're doing, Baruch Hashem, on a minute by minute. But being Mekabel or Malchus Shemayim is actually the first thing. I would even say, and I have said this many times to bar mitzvah kids, that as soon as you can, be Mekabel or Malchus Shemayim, because you should be Mekabel or Malchus Shemayim. Wait till the earliest shita and say Sakecham, and be Mekabel or Malchus Shemayim, because that Kabbalah is going to work for you for your whole life. So don't wait. So comes the Tzidkas Hatzadik, Mitzvah Rishayna Shenischayev Adam Kishanasa Adam Ben Shloshas Rishanu Hu Kriya Shma Shel Arvish Shehu Harashis, and that qualifies as the rashis. Remember, Ois Aleph, Ois Beis, and Ois Gimel, specifically Ois Aleph, Beis, and Gimel, where we talked about the tremendous tremendous light that comes over a person at the beginning of a project. That was the whole Tzadok. We spent so much time on the fact that at the first day of the Zman, the first day of a new mitzvah, the first day you decide to do something gewaldic, you have tremendous or, but then it diminishes. And in Ois Beis, he told us that every bracha is like that. Baruch atah Hashem. Can you hear me? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Then we start b'noichach. I'm just doing chazara. And then beyond Nelam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Nelam, Elokeinu melech haolam. Way out there. But we start off b'noichach because that's the way life is. Starts with b'noichach. So the big or at the beginning of a kid's bar mitzvah, ben shalosh esrei shana, is the or of Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim. That 13-year-old kid can do it better. You listen, share this. That this 13-year-old kid can be Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim in a way that none of us can. It's the first day of his man. It's the first day of his life as an adult. So that's the Kabbalah Ol Malchus Shemayim. Hu harashis. That is the rashis that we've been talking about all these weeks. K'moshe nispoyer leil. Kihu ubrachos echad. I just told you about brachas. Reminded you about brachas. Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim is also a bracha. Raksha brachos bifrat ha'maisa. Brachos is before you put on tefillin, before you hang up a mezuzah. But so that's on maisim. Brachos bifrat ha'maisa goes on the detail of your life. Vizu Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim is the whole thing, the whole picture. I'll call Maisa Hakiba, I'll call Maisa Hashchiva. Right now, this is not just when you're bar mitzvah, it's for all of us. You're Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. This is covering and it's going through the same stages for the whole day. Dehainu, when you're Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim, like probably we do this. If you take a minute or 30 seconds when you say Shema in the morning, we all should be capable of being Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim, to be mismonaid to the Eidod Milvadai, to be mismonaid to the fact that whatever Hashem is going to do today is going to be the Ratzon Hashem, and it's going to be the right thing, whether I feel it or not, whether it's behester, whether it's begilui. We're good at that. We can do that kavanah, but that's a rashis. That's that first moment. We will get that first moment of inspiration. The trick is to keep it as the phone starts ringing and the WhatsApp start coming and the business starts going and the problems start going and we have a fight with our wife or our husband or something like that. That's where it's hard to remember, where our kids come home with Torah. So that's where it's hard to, that's where we don't have the Or Hashem. So it's exactly what Rav Tzadok said earlier by brachas, that we're b'noichach, ubiyad nelam. Where's Hashem? Where did he go? The answer is he's there, but now we have a bigger avodah to catch it. Now comes the fun part. Vishal Arvis. We have Kriya Shmashal Shachris, Kriya Shmashal Arvis, morning, night. Remember, the morning represents clarity. Do you know, by the way, that the word for morning is boker, and the word boker means clarity. Bikoret habikra. The reason why a shepherd is called a boker, it's called a boker because he's watching, not just because he's watching boker, but the reason why the whole thing is because his job is to individualize and distinguish between every shepsula. So, when a boker always means to distinguish, clarity. And erev means everything's all mixed up. Me'urav. Everything becomes like one of those shawarmas.
That's why we say that first everything is mixed up and then
exactly right. That's exactly what he's going to say over here. So, Arvis Shachris. And the Navi in many places talks about the Geula, Mashiach, as the boker. The boker, the new morning. Morning has broken. It's a new morning. Meaning we can see clearly. Also like how do you define boker? The Shulchan Aruch says a couple of definitions. On Shiur's chaveroi, berichuk dalad abbas u'makiroi, so that you can see somebody dalad abbas away and still recognize it. Achi yavchin beit Kehillas Shivtei. These are different shiurim of boker. All has to do with being able to, but at night you see somebody walking and you don't know who it is. If you know them very, very well, maybe you'll recognize their silhouette. That's the Hester Panim. But in the morning you can see it. So there's Hester Panim of Hashem and there's Gilui Panim of Hashem. There's a Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim ba'erev, ba'layla, there's a Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim ba'yoyim, ba'boker, ba'yihi erev, ba'yihi boker. Shel arvis koidim. Now here's what's interesting. Why did the Erev Shui say come before the boker? Should we start with clarity and then work our way up in Madrega until we get to a place and we're able to see clarity even when there is no clarity? Or should we start, it's counterintuitive, to start with a place of being all mixed up and not seeing anything to get to a place of boker? Why would the order be Vayihi Erev, Vayihi boker? So, yeah, good kasha. Shel arvis kodem. Get the pasach beitana. How do we know arvis is kodem? Well, how do we know? We all know. But you see, the Tana took this very seriously. It wasn't just a drasha, because the first words in Shas is Me'mas Haikari to Shema Ba'arvis. Even before the Tana, the Gemara makes this point, even though before the Tana introduces this idea of saying Kriya Shema, like you don't start a book by saying, when do we do it? What? First the subject should be, you have to say Kriya Shema. More important, you have to be Mekabel Malchus Shemayim. Third point, when? Probably by day. What else? By night. No. Right away. First words. May Masai Kari to Shema Ba'arvis, a Mishnah we all know by heart. So the Gemara asks this question. The lashon of the Gemara is Tana Heicha Koi. I'm not sure, Chaim, how do you translate Tana Heicha Koi? The Gemara's question.
What do we find? What do we see that's...
What's the words mean? Tana, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Where was he holding? Like, right? Where was he holding? Heicha Koi. Like why did he suddenly burst out with the question of May Masai Kari to Shema Ba'arvis? What are gestanden? Where Heicha Koi? It's an interesting question. I just never had. Like, where was he holding in Big Baber Sedra? Or where was he holding in his life? I'm not sure. Like, interesting, right? Tana Heicha Koi. So the Gemara says that Koi. Oh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was starting with Psukim. So of course, he wasn't writing the Chumash, he was writing a Mishnah. And the Chumash you're supposed to know to get into this class of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So he was explaining the Pasuk, he was learning the Pasuk of B'shach B'chov Kubecha, which is not what anybody said. Everybody said Vayir, Vayiboker. But he was studying the Pasuk of B'shach B'chov Kubecha, and he says, okay, what does that mean? Heicha Koi. So the Gemara says, Akra Koi. The Gemara actually says two answers. The Boyasema, I'm adding, but that's what the Gemara says. Yalef Ribriyase Shalayla. So the first answer in the Gemara is B'shach B'chav Kubecha. That's where Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was holding. And the second answer in the Gemara is Riyase Shalayla Vayer Vayiboker. So we have two operating psukim here. And the Gemara is Mefalpel, right there at Beis Hamad Beis, as to why we need two things. What's the point of the Yiboy Seba? What question is an answer? Okay. Says Reb Tzadok, this is, I just like to point these things out, a favorite of Rabbi Tzadok in many, many places. The answer is the Bereisha Chashoicha Bahadr Nahira. Anybody know where that Gemara is? It's not an obvious Gemara. The Gemara says Bereisha Chashoicha, that when Hashem created the world, first he created darkness, and then he created light. The Gemara is in Shabbos. It's not talking about anything Kabbalistic or anything. It's talking about, I don't think, the Gemara is talking about, like, why do Izim always walk before Ksavim? That's what the Gemara is thinking about. I'm sure it's very Kabbalistic, but I don't know the Kabbalah of it. But, why do the black goats walk before the white ones? That's the Gemara's question. And the answer is, because they're part of the Bria Sa'olam. And the Bria Sa'olam was always darkness before light. A favorite quote out of context of Reb Tzadok, something we have to learn again, is the Briyasei Shalayla. It's not just Vayer Vayiboker. I mean, it is just, but the taich of Vayer Vayiboker means to say, do you ever think of it this way? That Hashem created darkness before He created light. A new insight. Vayer Vayiboker, Yom HaShishi. Oh, He created darkness before He created light. The Bereisha Kashoicha says Reb Tzadok Tzarech Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. Anybody who has a question who's not here can ask it in chat, and Chaim's going to read say it.
Yossi Haber, I'd like to know. If the clarity of Boker is supposed to follow up the confusion of Erev, isn't it backwards that Yaakov Maariv came after Avraham Avinu Yitzchak?
Oh.
I didn't hear the question.
The question is that we know that Avraham Avinu is Masakin Tfilah Shachris, Yitzchak Mincha, and Yaakov Meir. So the order is wrong. Why doesn't it go with the order of Vayer Vayiboker?
That's the most confusing is RV. So it's the harder Biru, probably, so it came last.
So it's like, here's the answer. This is the answer. I mentioned this last week. Emes Vayer Vayiboker. Emes Reishach Hashelcha V'Hadar Dahir. So why in the morning when we say B'Yirchos Kriyash, why do we say Yotzer Or V'Choshech? And the answer is that in Hashem's world, look how pivotal this question is. In Hashem's world, B'Reishach Hashelcha V'Hadar Dahir. In our world, we get up in the morning, Yitzhadam L'Faloi V'Avinasai Adayar. So they said before, Anan Paula Da V'Yamamid. I don't know. We're day workers. Our day starts in the morning. So for so, our day starts in the morning. So Hashem's day starts at night, and our day starts in the morning. That's clear. Yotzer Or V'Choshech. That Or comes before Choshech. In the way almost the Pashat of Pshat in that bracha that we say Birchas Krishma is that the world works. Hashem created Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Yotzer, right? Vasiya. So Yotzer or Ubore Choshech, the world of Bria stands higher than the world of Yitzira. The world of Choshech stands higher than the world of Or. Klapeinu, when we're going and working into our avodas Hashem. So in a certain way, we get up in the morning and we're working our way up to Choshech. Isn't this counterintuitive? We're working our way up to Choshech. It's very simple. What does it mean? I think it's very simple. We're working our way up to from going to seeing the presence of Hashem from seeing it begilui as Avraham Avinu did. Yeah, listen, he was saved from a Kivshan Aish, and he saw Klor, the Hashem. Yitzchak, all the way, as Gil says, to Yaakov, where he was Oivedes Hashem Balaylos. Whereas Yaakov was what reached the Madrega that each one of the Avos added on to the Avos before. So Yaakov, we're the Bnei Yisrael, yeah? Yaakov was able to be Oivedes Hashem Balaylos.
Then why is it Krishna on backwards? It starts from.
Well, so they would have like a stira here.
It starts from Yesh to Ayin, so then it should be.
Correct. But you agree that Avodas Hashem Bayoim is easier than Avodas Hashem Balayim.
The Rambam is the
For sure, but that's a higher madrega than Mayas. I'm working nights. So let's go Pamela. So the first thing you see is that each one of the Avos was the previous Av plus. So Yitzchak was Abraham plus and Yaakov was Abraham Yitzchak plus. But Yisrael, that was a tremendous hachala, Yaakov Avinu, when he went to Mitzrayim. And we became Avadim in Mitzrayim. Yosef Hayev in Mitzrayim. Tremendous choshech, tremendous laila. And we were able to succeed somehow or another. We survived the laila. So Yaakov Avinu was the one who gave us the koyach to survive 210 years in Mitzrayim, and Yaakov Avinu was the one that gave us some kind of a koyach to survive through a Holocaust. So Lila. Emes. So let's try to make some seder here. Reb Tzadok wrote a book about Lila. Or does he say Lila? Sof kol sof. That's why he tells us the bar mitzvah kid is starting with Lila. Kabbalah Sol Baruch Shemayim starting with Lila. So he says, even b'toich ha'choshech v'hasichlus v'ha'eder ha'maiser v'az soifa l'kaiva ba'oisher. Right? You remember the Gemara says that kol ha'makaiva satera b'oini soifa l'skaiva ba'oisher. If you could be Meiser Nefesh for Torah and keep the Torah even when you can't afford to keep the Torah, Hashem will give you money at the end and riches at the end and wealth at the end. You'll be Mekayim Ba'osher. It's just an aside. It's just an aside. Not that I'm any great Osher, but I saw this in my own life. Ulahayra di Yamama Hasaga Habrura will end up with Yoim. Shayideza Nibsha Chamaisa. Now, before I begin my commentary, I just want to stelzu to everything that we've been learning for the last 8 weeks. And that is, you'll remember Eliyahu Navi. Rash. Ruach, Rash, Eish. And you remember Yecheskel. Went through the same Klippas, Sholosh Klippas Hatzameis, till they got to Klippas Noida. We spoke a lot about it, and we spoke a lot about the fact that Rav Tzadok says you cannot skip those madrigas. So it's really the same thing. We have two operating principles here. One is that the beginning of everything is tremendous amount of or. But then we have to take a deep dive into darkness. Darkness. Because darkness is where you grow as a person. So, ironically, what he's telling us here is that the big R for the bar mitzvah boy comes balayla. We say, Shehu harashis. That's the rashis. Shenispar la'el, which we've been talking about. Beis Gimel, I'm not imagining this. This is what we've been talking about, this big R that comes at the beginning. Yitzias Mitzrayim Gufa was a big R. But the Avdus was a big Choshech. So it was Choshech, R. Bereisha, Chashucha, Ubesayfai, Nahira. And you have this, you have the whole Avdus Mitzrayim had to come before Har Sinai. And Rav Tzadok says in the Kedusha Shabbos at the beginning of Pri Tzaddik, he says that Sheishas Yimei Habaisa, our week work, Sheishas Yom Tasa Melachtecha has to come before Shabbos. It doesn't work the other way. We don't start with Shabbos. Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Shabbos. Shabbos is the end. Hashem worked 6 days, then he gave Shabbos. I want to say a svar which I hope is Miskabel al Leyv. 2 sentences. Why does Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim, which is what we're talking about here, need to take place first by Lila? Besides for the act of seeking is greater. And here's the pshat. Yaakov Avinu got there. So therefore we could get there. The pshat is that the simplest pshat in Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim. What are we thinking about? Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim. Simplest pshat is Einoid Milvadoi. Right? Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's only one thing going on here. There's only one thing going on here. You know, so if you start thinking like Russians, Ukrainians, Hashem Echad. There's only one thing going on here. Yeah, in the world of Asiya, there's a lot of things going on. When you're talking about health and illness, there's only one thing going on here. Hashem Echad. So the morning, the night, we're makabel. Everybody knows the famous skula of the Brisker Rav. Everybody knows what we learned over and over and over again in Chaim. That the Einoid Milvadoi, that if one could reach a simple hasaga, which is not, I think it's a very simple hasaga. When one can reach a simple hasaga, that at the end of the day, Einoid Milvadoi, there's simply nothing else. Like you're worried about your clients, you're worried about your kids, you're worried about your wife, you're worried about your parents. No, Einoid Milvadoi. That's Kabbalah Salmachus Shabai. Then everything goes well. In other words, once we crawl into that place, that was the famous story of the Brisker Rav with his kids traveling the borders. They had a hard time with one of the border guards traveling, and you could see today on the news what it is to go from border to border, from machsom to machsom. Like, who are you? What are you? Where are your papers? And Rabbi Yaakov turned around to his kids, Rab Beryl, Rab David, Soloveitchik, the Gedolim. And he said to them, somebody was not thinking about the Einoid Milvadoi. That's why we're having a hard time here. So they, okay, Dad, think about the Einoid Milvadoi and everything went smoothly. So that's, the Nefesh HaChaim says this is the only skula that he knows works. He writes, Nefesh HaChaim. A lot of skulas, this is what he knows works.
Kabbalah Salmachus Shamayim.
Kabbalah Salmachus Shamayim.
That's the skula.
That's the skula. You really don't need any other skula. I was at a chuppah last night, and I asked the Shui was there with me. I asked the father of the shtickle bakubal, and he's shining at the chuppah, Amos. So I asked him for a bracha for Refuah Shleima. I don't feel so good. COVID doesn't seem to have left me, but. So he said a couple of minutes, and he came over to me afterwards with the yayin of the chuppah. I said, okay, is it a skula to drink the yayin of the chuppah? So I said, no. So he took his finger into the yayin and he painted the Shem Hashem on my forehead.
How did the rub feel?
Sticky. Huh? That's it. Mechikas Hashem. It was like, thank God it was white wine. Listen, I'm not knocking it. Like, whatever works. Skulas. The
Take another drink.
It doesn't work like in one day. It takes.
It's working.
I'm not making claims. I mean, if he did it, it says in the Sefer that that's you should do it. But I'm not knocking anything. But what I'm saying, I think the Brisker Rav also would not have knocked it. But the Brisker Rav would say that if you are totally makabel malchus shamayim and you totally accept the fact that Einoid Milvadoi, you don't need anything. Not that I'm knocking it. There's svarim already from Kanmoinim on skula. You don't need it. You don't need it because there's a skula of all skulas. The mother of all skulas is Einoid Milvadoi. So, and I don't know that the Tzidkas Hatzadik is saying anything different here. He's saying that the beginning of everything is Kabbalah Salmachus Shamayim. So here's my svar. I didn't say yet. The svar is that B'choshech, b'layla, b'hester ponim, when you don't understand what's going on, there's no seder to the bria. We don't see, all we see is the silhouette of Hashem. At that time, there's no clarity, there's only Einoid Milvadoi. It's an ironic machshava, and that is that it's dafka balayla, it's dafka b'shachbacha, it's dafka when life is in Galus or in personal Galus. It's only there where we see all the things that we relied on are not necessarily there. We relied on our friends, we relied on our government, we relied on our wealth. We relied on the fact they're going to wake up healthy. At some point in the darkness, we realize Einoid Milvadai. There's no other place to recognize Einoid Milvadai until everything else goes away. So when you think about it, like the Einoid Milvadai at night is even easier than Einoid Milvadai by Yom. Isn't that right? The Einoid Milvadai, it's easy to right? No atheist in the foxhole. The Einoid Milvadai starts off Balayla, and you work your way today, even though in our lives it's Yitzhar Var Choshech. That's the Seder Hadvar. And it's the steps we can't skip, as we see from Eliyahu Hanavi. That's Hashem loy barash Hashem. Ruach. Oh, okay, that must be Hashem loy baruach Hashem. You can't skip those. We learned this in Reish Chavches. We learned this over and over again. I made a big hakdama of the fact that you can't skip them because everything comes back to that simple yisod. You have to go through the choshech to really understand Einoid Milvadai until you can get to the or. Einoid Milvadai equals Kabbalah Sobal Chushamayim. Now I have a few minutes, let me tell you something else. There's a mitzvah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim is the background to everything we're learning here. Why do I say that? Because that's the first words of the Tzidkas Hatzadik. But just like Yetzias Mitzrayim, there was the first Yetzias Mitzrayim, Pesach. This was like Pesach. The first Pesach was a Pesach of Chipazayin, and then afterwards it was Masudar. So too every or starts off big. Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Torah says maybe in 3 places, you have to be Zocher Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the pshat in remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim is remembering that there's not necessarily teva in the world. The simplest pshat in Zocher Yetzias Mitzrayim is that Hashem runs the world. Isn't that the simplest pshat? Not that we achieved our freedom. We're not remembering. It's chayrus. Chayrus from what? Chayrus from teva. The Pashat of Shat is Chayrus from Teva. We were Avadim. Nobody's getting out of here. Nobody was able to predict Yetzias Mitzrayim even a year before it happened. Nobody could predict this. This was just the way life was for centuries. We were Avadim in Mitzrayim, but then Hashem changed the Teva. Nobody was able to predict that the Yam Suf is going to split. That wasn't something that was predictable even as they were standing right there. How are we going to be saved? If the believers believed we were going to be saved, they didn't know if it was going to be Malachim coming from Shemayim and flying them through the air over the Yam Suf, or all the Mitzrayim dropping dead. Who's predicting Kriyas Yam Suf? I don't even know if Moshe Rabbeinu understood Kriyas Yam Suf until Kriyas Yam Suf happened. So the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim is all Einoid Milvadai, correct? Einoid Milvadai. Everything is wrong. All of a sudden, everything is okay. Einoid Milvadai. So the Kriya Shema, Kabbalah Sobal Chushamayim equals Einoid Milvadai equals Zeicher Yetzias Mitzrayim. Do you agree with this? It's the same thing. That's a theme that we see. So here's an interesting thing, which I'm sure is coming to everybody's mind like it came to mine. The Haggadah. There's 2 passages in the Haggadah which are really one passage, by the way. When we're on a Seder night, we know by heart, but it's like Hanukkah, when it comes to Hanukkah, because it was a year, do we start from the right, do we start from the left? Like 2 passages that are so fundamental in the Haggadah that comes at B'Zachar Zeh. First one is Ma'aseh Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, Shaya B'Subim B'Vnei Brak, everybody knows, V'aya B'Saper B'Yetzias Mitzrayim, when? Kol Oisei Alayla. Okay. At Shabo Talmidei of Amrulem Rabbi Seidu. Kehillas Makriya Shmashel Shachris. Agav, the Shagasaria asks, what? They go to Chatzos, I said, mitzvah pater b'la mitzvah, to interrupt the Tanoim. Think about it. When they were being Mesaper, B'yitzias Mitzrayim, book, you got daven nets today. Kehillas Makriya Shmashel Shachris. Something very deep going on here. He answers, of course, in the column of Oisik mitzvah pater b'la mitzvah, that it doesn't include Zmanim. So Shagasaria says, famous Shagasaria, doesn't include Zmanim. And then the Haggadah goes on to say, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he was one of those, sitting there. Do you ever make this comparison? He was one of the ones sitting there with Rabbi Akiva. And he says, Harei ani kevem shivim shana v'lo zachisi shetayamar yitzias Mitzrayim b'leilos. So, is the Haggadah out of order? What do you mean? He was darshaning in Yitzias Mitzrayim kol oisei alaylo with Rabbi Akiva. Now, true, he was only 18 years old here. Everyone knows kiven shivim shana. He just became the nasi of the Sanhedrin. But the Hakdama, if you will, of the Haggadah is how Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ma'aser Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua. By the way, if I don't want to get into it now, it's not the time, but think about the story of Yavna and Rabbi Yeshua. For Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, sitting there with Rabbi Akiva, and they were Mesaper B'yitzias Mitzrayim. So here's the Laila, that's what they were doing. Let's just say it's Eid Seder Mukta B'Bucher B'Haggadah. Maybe. But it's interesting.
This is a seeker of the Chachamim, and he's saying Te'amer, meaning the klal. It sounds like
Te'amer means what?
Meaning the klal has a chiyuv now to say. Like we're bringing it into the message.
Okay, what does Te'amer mean? Why say Lo Zachisi? I didn't know I was allowed to. What's Lo Zachisi?
Sounds like he wanted and it wasn't like a klal rule or something.
Maybe. How do you understand Lo Zachisi? It's a schus to say Yitzias Mitzrayim. Mitzvah. Lo Zachisi. I have to tell you, to me it's Pashat Pshat. What do you say, Chaim? Lo Zachisi.
You're supposed to be able to see it.
Yeah, Pashat Pshat. Like, who could see Hashem B'layla? Who could see Eid B'Vadai B'layla? You would. Like, right? Hide and seek's harder to play B'layla. Even if I find you, I don't see you. I keep thinking of the famous, probably the Barditchever. Probably the Barditchever. He said that he was talking about Hester Panim, and he said, "Can you imagine a kid goes to playing hide and seek back in those days, and a kid hides and nobody comes to look for him? He's a tsar." If Hashem is hiding, imagine the tsar of the Shechina, nobody's looking for Hashem. Hester Panim is part of the game. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was apparently a young man, so he was 17 years old, 18. I wasn't zeicha to Shetayamar Yitzias Mitzrayim Ba'leilos. I'm the Rosh of the Sanhedrin. Peladik, just such a kavana amuka when we say the Haggadah. Don't read that quickly. What a story to tell our kids. I couldn't honestly say that I was makabel o malchus shamayim b'layla. Ad shedarsha ben Zayba. He needed a drasha ben Zayba. Fascinating. Shenabar Zayba threw out a pasuk l'man tiskar sheim tzeis chaberetz yitzrayim kol yemei chayecha hayobim kol yemei chayecha halelos. Ben Zayba tells him, or he heard a drasha of Ben Zayba. Ben Zayba was a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva, as we know. He heard a drasha of Ben Zayba. Kol yemei. Okay, should I have a pasuk? Kol yemei chayecha. There's an extra kol there. Ben Zayba darshan. Now I'm a zoicha to say Yitzias Mitzrayim b'leilos. By the way, the Gemara Brachas Tavches, I think, says that the Yitzias Mitzrayim was Balayla. What's the chiddush? There's a chiddush that we should make the seder b'layla b'erev teichlu matzos. Well, the pasuk was around. What was the chiddush Shivtei Yeshurun? There's a chisi Shivtei Yetzias Mitzrayim. It was natural to us that the Tanoim should be sitting and being darshaning in Yetzias Mitzrayim koloisa alayla. Hachidarsha ben Zayba. Then what's more interesting, and it could be that we're running out of time, so we'll get to finish this very, very important thing next week. Chachamim v'ayrim, the Chachamim argued. L'chayr it's a machlokes. Yimei chayecha oil l'mazeh. Kol yimei chayecha oil l'mabah. Or sorry, l'avi l'moisa Mashiach. So the Chacham did b'chal hold the Ben Zayba's drasha. You're darshaning the kol wrong. I don't know if there's another way to learn this, Bryce. You're darshaning the kol wrong, and kol yimei chayecha. That's talking about Yemoisa Mashiach. What's the chiddush Yemoisa Mashiach? Clarity there. So what's the chiddush?
Exactly. You're going to need, it sounds like the clarity is not going to be obvious.
I think. What do you say?
I think it was interesting. Even the Yemot Mashiach, you're saying it won't be obvious.
That's what it sounds like.
I think.
Background should be opposed to that. That's the one that should be the bigger chiddush.
The chiddush is, even though when there's complete clarity, so what's the point of being maskeh Yetzias Mitzrayim? Right. To tell me that Hashem goes against the time, I see it in front of my eyes. What's the point of saying Kriya Shema? What's the point of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim when it's Yom already? In other words, the whole avodah of Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim, the whole avodah of Zechel Yetzias Mitzrayim, doesn't seem to apply by Yom. It only should apply by Layla. It doesn't seem to apply when the big morning is broken, at the time of Mashiach, Yemoisa Mashiach. So what do I have to say? Comes the Chachamim and they say, you know why it says Kol Yemei Chayecha? Even after Mashiach comes and you won't see any point in it.
But it says Lehavi, Yemot Mashiach. It's a strange language there. What's this word Lehavi?
You don't think it means to include?
Lehavi, to bring. Maybe it's the active kind of thing.
A beautiful thought. Needs some machshava. So this is going to be a cliffhanger here. Because to me, I'm going to give you my preface. To me, this is such an important limud of Yom and Laila, of Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim, and the Maramakim is what everybody just learned in Daf Yomi, of Chagiga Yudalad, where Bet Zayba is so prominent in two ways. Because Bet Zayba, first of all, was Niftas Lepardes. And the Gemara says later that Bet Zayba, I'll say this, that one of the major themes in Reb Tzadok, one of the other major themes in Reb Tzadok, we could call this course themes in Reb Tzadok, is Mayim El Yoidim and Mayim Tachtoidim. And that's what we have to be Bavara. Reb Tzadok talks about this all over the place. But the Mayim El Yoidim is, the Chumash talks about it. That which is in the Shemayim, Mayim Tachtoidim. What's our relationship? This world and the worlds above us. Rabbi Kiva said when they went into the paradise, Al Tayber Mayin Mayin.
Because that's separate, it's all one.
Okay. Kishitagia la'avnei hashayish al Tayber Mayin Mayin. So what do we think? We think that, before you dive, make sure that that's water. Because it could look like water. Anything can look like anything these days. But then Ben Zayba, later on, the Gemara says they found Ben Zayba Acher Shenifka, standing there Harabayis, sitting in the Harabayis. And what are you thinking about Ben Zayba? The only difference between the Mayim El Yodim and the Mayim Tachtoinim ain't no El Gimel at Spois Levad. The Chachamim come and they argue with him and they say, what are you talking about? It's Ein El Kamalei Nima. What about Machlokes? Wow. Machlokes, what's the Hebdel between Mayim El Yodim and Mayim Tachtoinim? Daf Yomi goes too fast to be able to understand this. but we're not going so fast. So This is the same Ben Zoyba the Darshan Kol Yimei Chayecha. Afilu Baleilos. It's the same Ben Zoyba, no question. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah is the same Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah that was sitting with Rabbi Akiva. And before I do, create the circle. I'm giving you homework, guys. Create the circle of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, the times that they lived in. Ben Zoyba, what are the Bible Yodim as Choshech? Do you know what was there before there was Or? Choshech. The Bible Yodim, we would crawl into the Bible Yodim, we're crawling into a place of darkness. It's like underwater, dark. If we're in the Mayim Tachtoinim, in our world, it's light, ironically. So we're moving up to Choshech with Yaakov Avinu. And it's not so far, Ben Zoyba said, Gimel Atzpois. Chacham said, Gimel Atzpois, Moli Niba. It's actually Rabacha, but then the Gemara says later it's a Chacham. Okay, we'll be Mavar that. Thank you very much. Sorry for all the noise. Amen. Loi Barash Hashem.
When you said it, it says the Chol Israel over the Moshe Seichas.
Very good.
After the whole Choshech, but they got to be dark.
After Choshech, they saw it.
They had to go through the Choshech, and then it was like,
Good.
לא יודע אם דף לא מיניה, או נחגיגה, השקל שתי אצבעות.
Oh.
So maybe 13